Should be up momentarily.
Looking good. I see your hand.
That's good. Let me refresh my page so I can see what it looks like too. Hey, I see my hand too. Hi, everybody. Just waiting to see how it looks to make sure the light's right. So, welcome, everybody. I hope everybody's doing well and having a good afternoon. Oh, I think I'll just move it up just a bit. My cameraman and my lighting man are not doing a good job today. There, that looks better. All right, are we ready to start? Do we have anybody that's asking any questions yet, Julia?
Nope, just some people, a lot of people saying hello. We have hello from Ireland.
Ireland, wow.
Area from Colorado Springs, Central PA, Culver City, California, Alberta, Argentina.
Oh my God.
Georgetown, Canada, UK, Nova Scotia. You've got quite the.
We're international today.
It's terrific.
Well, welcome everyone to another afternoon of fly tying. I hope you all got your vices and materials ready. We're gonna tie see if I can get it right. A pheasant tail hotspot jig. Is that right? A pheasant tail hotspot jig. Anyway, it's like a Frenchie with a hotspot on the jig hook, sorta. But this is a generic nymph pattern that you can substitute anything you want on this, and you don't have to tie this on a jig hook. If you don't have any jig hooks and you don't have slotted beads, because you won't be able to get a standard bead on a jig hook very easily. So if you don't have jig hooks and slotted beads, don't worry about it, because you can tie the same fly on a standard, you know, I would put it on something like a wide gap Euro nymphing hook, wide gap tactical nymph hook, or even the check nymph hook, but you know, anything fairly short shank or standard shank, and then just put a standard bead on it. So not a big deal if you don't have the slotted stuff. And this is not just because this is a jig fly, and it's kind of a tight line Euro nymphing fly, doesn't mean you can't use this kind of fly on a standard setup with an indicator or just fishing with a floating line. This is not a fly that you need to reserve for the Euro nymphing technique. I use these jig flies a lot just when I'm doing a standard dry dropper. I'll just hang a jig fly off a big dry fly for a dry dropper. So you can use them for anything. And the materials are fairly simple. You need a bead and you need a hook. You need some hare's ear or some kind of rough dubbing with lots of guard hairs in it. And then you need some sort of sparkly chartreuse or orange or pink material for the hotspot. You can even use thread for that hotspot if you don't have the right color sparkly dubbing. And probably the hardest part of the material selection here is your pheasant tail, believe it or not. Pheasant tail's pretty standard if you get good stuff. I'll show you a few pheasant tails here. If you get good, what's called, I grabbed the wrong ones. I put those over to the side. Here's the ones I want to use right here. Okay, so if you buy a good pheasant tail from the store, from the fly shop or online, you'll get, and you can see this one's already pretty chopped up because it's the last good one I had left. This is called a center tail. This is down the center of a male ringneck pheasant's tail. And the reason you want these center tails, if you can get them, is that they have usable material on both sides. What you want is this rusty stuff that you see on the ends here. And these feathers, these big center tail feathers, are also a bigger feather, so they're stronger fibers. So the material will be a little bit durable and easier to wind. And it's also longer, as you'll see. If you get too short, you have trouble winding it. Now, if you don't get really good pheasant tails, or if you hunt pheasants and you save the tails, you might have a lot of this stuff. And what this is not a center tail. It's only got that nice rusty stuff that we like on one side, and it's fairly short, and it doesn't have any usable stuff, at least not for this pheasant tail nymph, on the other side. You could use this other stuff for wing cases on nymphs, or you could make a pheasant tail out of that, but it wouldn't have the same color, and it wouldn't have the same little fibers. Here's another one that's a little bit better, but again, it's a one-sided tail. It's only got usable stuff on this side, and it isn't very long before you get into this dark stuff at the bottom. You want this rusty stuff on the tips for your pheasant tails. So that's pheasant tail, and I'll show you how to handle it when we get into tying it.
And Tom, I put a link to it on to the pheasant tail that we sell on our website.
Oh, great! So we've got a link. We've got a link to the pheasant tails, and we should put links to the jig hooks and the slotted beads on there too. And don't forget, there is free shipping for Orvis fly tying materials and fishing tackle right now. So go and order and enjoy the free shipping, especially with fly tying materials, because they're not that expensive, and the shipping sometimes is a little painful. So it's nice to have free shipping on fly materials. Now, do we have any, before I start, do we have any questions, Julia? Anybody out there?
We don't have any questions yet. You're still getting a lot of hellos, but
hello.
People were asking what you're tying, but we just have a whole onslaught of greetings.
Oh, good. Well, I wish I could read them all. I have to stare at the camera, so I can't read them all.
Someone is saying, please reschedule in Nebraska. Genesis eggs.
please reschedule in Nebraska. Oh, yeah, okay, I will. Yeah, I was supposed to be speaking in Omaha, what was it, a week ago or so, and we had to reschedule that. So we haven't rescheduled, but hopefully we will.
And Gaston just asked, what are the sizes for this fly?
The sizes for this fly, you could tie this from a 12 down to an 18. I'm going to tie a 12 just because it's not a real big fly, and I'm trying to tie as big of a fly as I can because phones aren't the greatest cameras for taking close-up pictures, at least not with the technology that I have here in my house right now. And getting any kind of if any of you have tried getting any kind of web streaming hardware right now is very difficult, as you can imagine. There's pretty high demand for it, so really difficult to get hold of. So we're working with what we got. Now, I'm going to say this again. The video of the actual tying is not going to be world class, okay? It's just not going to be, given the limitations of the technology. So if you really want to see a fly like this tied close up in 4K, then go to people like Tim Flagler on the Orvis Learning Center, probably has a pattern very similar to this, or the guys at Fly Fish Food have some really, really great videos. They're doing them with good cameras, and they're doing them in a studio, and they're editing and things like that. So, which is all stuff we can't do when we're live, right? Because we're live, so we can't edit. Anyway.
You did just get a question that came through, Tom, from
Okay.
Gary.
Yeah.
And Gary's asking, what flies do you recommend for the opening season?
What flies do I recommend for the opening season? Where? When does your season open? I would recommend a woolly bugger and an egg fly.
Looks like he's from New Jersey.
New Jersey. I would try a woolly bugger, an egg fly, and maybe one of these things we're going to tie today, this pheasant tail. That would cover a lot of things. Maybe a zebra midge too, which we tied last week. Last week, the week before. Anyways, we tied a zebra midge before. That'd be another good one to have.
All right. The only other question is asking if you could do a March fly at some point.
A March fly? Well, it's March and I'm tying a fly.
But
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe a March Brown? Is that what the person was referring to?
I don't know.
Okay.
And you're also getting compliments again on your FSBI sticker. That's it.
Yes, I'm an investigator. I don't know if I'm official, but I'm an investigator. All right. Shall we tie? Everybody ready? You got your materials ready? Got your hooks ready? Got your beads ready? All right, let's go. Close your eyes because I'm going to move the camera around and it's going to get really jerky and bouncy. So stand by and we'll do some tying. I've got this, so I have to adjust a little bit less than I did before. Oops. And I can see the comments here. Very cool. Is that clear? Oh.
Looks good.
Yeah.
Very clear. I think once the blue background. Oh, it just went out of focus a little bit.
Well, it's. I think until I move, until the camera, the autofocus catches my movement. Oh yeah, the blue background. God, thanks for reminding me. I almost forgot. The blue background. Oh, I got fly tying materials piled on top of the blue background. What a mess. What?
Someone's asking if that's a new vice.
It's not a new vise, it's my other vise. I switch back and forth between a Regal and a Renzetti, and this is my Regal.
Perfect.
Oh, and my other light. Oh, I got to turn up the lights here, guys. It's going to get better. It's going to get better. How's that?
It looks good. If you want to move it a little bit to the camera's right, it'll enclose the view with the blue.
Huh?
If you move the blue background just a little bit to the right, yeah, perfect.
Okay. And is it in focus? Yeah, it looks like it. Okay. So let me see if I can get in here without knocking everything around. All right, so this is the Pheasant Tail Hotspot jig or whatever. And we're going to start with a jig hook, which looks like that. It's barbless. And I'm going to take a bead. This bead is, oh God, I don't know what size it is. You know, it's really annoying that the people that do beads in fractions instead of in grams or millimeters or something, because I don't know about you, but like 30 seconds and 6, I don't know about 5/32 and 3/16. And, you know, if they did them in grams, did them in the metric system, we'd be a lot off. But anyway, I have a bead and I have a hook. Now you'll notice a bead has a slotted side and a round side, and you want to put the hook point through the round side, and then you just twirl it a little bit and it'll slip over that hook. And then I'm going to put it in the vise like so. Now, what you want for this bead is you want it to be above the center line of the hook. You want to rotate it a little bit until it gets like that. You see how when I push that bead, it stays above the center line of that hook? And that's so that when you fish this thing, the fly will ride upside down for sure. The hook point will be up and the bead will bounce along the bottom, but hopefully the hook won't get caught and stuff. So that's the way you want that bead to look. And you just got to fiddle with it and rotate it around there until you get it into the right place because of that slot. All right, everybody with me? Questions? What?
We actually don't have any questions yet.
Oh, I see. What bead size? What bead size?
And things like that. But
Yeah, bead sizing. You know, I would go online There's a whole bunch of bead charts. I think there's one on the Orvis website somewhere. There used to be, and you know, if you look hard enough, of course, if you buy my latest book, The Orvis Guide to Fly Tying, you can see all the bead sizes in both fractions and millimeters so that you can make that transition, and also it will tell you the recommended hook sizes. But I think you can find those charts online. If you Google something like fly tying bead hook size, you'll find it. And yes, Gaston, you can use a regular nymph hook. You must come in a little bit late. What is Wes saying? I can't read the whole thing. Most companies tell bead sizes.
He's just saying there's a normally conversion chart.
Yeah, there's lots of conversion charts. Okay, so I'm going to start my thread, and I'm using brown. You can use any color you want because the thread's going to be pretty much buried at the end. Why is it that I can't get? Why is it that I can't get my beads on a tactical jig hook? I can't read, and I don't want to touch my screen. Do you see that question?
Dad's asking, why is it that I cannot get my beads to sit correctly on an Orvis tactical jig hook?
Yeah, I don't know about other brands of beads and hooks. I know that the Orvis beads fit beautifully on the Orvis hooks, but yeah, I don't know. John Pryor, would this be a good spring steelhead fly? Yeah, I actually, or was it Sean Combs hooked a steelhead last week or 2 weeks ago on one of these or similar. Any other questions? Steve, I don't think you're using the right, what does he say? I don't think you're using the right size bead.
They're talking with one another. I don't think there aren't any other questions
Oh,
right now.
okay.
You're
Now,
good to go. I'll interrupt if we have some more questions.
okay, now this is a fairly big bead on this hook. I could have put a little bit smaller bead on here, but what I like to do is I tie my my size 12s, and this is the way a lot of the tactical professional nymph anglers do it. They tie their biggest bead on their biggest hook. So this is a size 12, biggest jig hook I use. And then when they tie the 14s, they go to the next bead size down. And then when they tie their 16s, they go with the next bead size down. So it's not so much about exactly imitating any insect with this kind of fishing as it is sink rate. And so if you have these in 3 size ranges, then you have fast, medium, and light sink rates. All right, so I'm going to start my thread. I'm going to start it right behind the bead. And you can see how just by putting that thread in there, I push that bead up where it's supposed to go. So I'm going to start my thread here. I'm going to wind back and forth a few times. And I am using a gold bead. You can use any color bead you want. I've used silver on this, black, fluorescent orange in the spring, when fish are eating eggs. You can use any color bead you want. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep winding thread right up against that bead until it stops wiggling. So I'll go back and forth a little bit. And then I'm building a dam of thread. Now, see right there, it stopped wiggling. And I'll take a couple more turns. There is nothing worse than fishing a nymph and having the bead slide down over the rest of the fly and then it doesn't work. So that is that's how you secure it. Now, if you want, you can also put a drop of head cement or super glue. Oh man, I just opened this head cement yesterday and it's already tight. All right, I'll use super glue. And there's a nice little slot in there if you tied this right. And you can just put a drop. My super glue closed up. There we go. You can just put a little drop of head cement or super glue right in that slot and coat those threads. Be careful not to put too much super glue in there, because if this runs down in the eye of the hook, it's really difficult to get it out.
Testing, is it important to use lead wraps for this size?
Lead wraps?
Yep.
I'm not using lead wraps. You know what? You can, if you want, you can put some wraps of non-toxic wire right behind that bead to jam it up there, but that's a really heavy tungsten bead, and I don't need any additional stuff on there. That's already going to be a clunker. So you don't need to. You didn't
put the dubbing wax on the rim of your head.
Michael, I couldn't remember. I remember you made that suggestion the other day, and I was thinking the other day.
Engaged watcher.
I got the pliers out and I opened the jar and I said, there was a guy the other day on Facebook Live that gave me a suggestion. I forgot what it was. So yes, I will try the wax trick tonight. I promise. All right, so I'm going to wind my thread back to the bend. Right, and I like to go down the bend a little bit because I want the tails on this thing to point down a little bit, because when a mayfly floats through the water or drifts through the water, let me see if I can grab one of my bead heads back here. Yeah. When a mayfly drifts, it's often with this attitude, with the tails cocked up and the head down. And so this is the way this thing is going to ride in the water, and it just gives it a little bit more natural look, maybe. Although the flies do tumble a lot in the current, so it's probably not super important, because the naturals and your flies are going to tumble back and forth quite a bit in the current. All right, so the tail thing is Coq de Leon, and you don't want many fibers. I would say 3, 4, at the most 6 fibers here, because it's all about sink rate here, and you don't want to retard the sink rate with a lot of material. So that's how much I'm going to use, just that much, just for a little impression of a tail. And I always wondered why the Euro nymph people used Coq de Leon, because it's not really a wet fly material. It's fairly stiff. And, I thought I would be smart and use wood duck fibers and partridge fibers. But what I realized is that this stuff is so much more durable than wood duck, because it's chicken feathers have really durable hackles. And the ones I tied with wood duck and partridge, the tails would eventually break off. And this stuff is so much more durable, so I can see why they use it. What kind of dispenser do you use for what? I can't read that.
He's asking, what kind of dispenser do you use for your super glue?
Oh, I got this trick from Enrico Puglisi. Here's the super glue. You buy it when you buy it. You get sometimes you get these dispensers, or you can get them separately, and it's just a little tube that you stick into the top of this tube. And what you do is you squirt it on, and then once you're done using the super glue, you just take a piece of paper towel and touch it to the top, and the rest of the super glue falls down inside the tube, and you can leave it open. It doesn't dry out. It does dry out occasionally, but really.
Bill's asking, what can you use instead of the Coq de Leon?
You can use wood duck. You can use grizzly hackle. Instead, you could use Cree hackle, you could use hen hackle, you could use a couple more fibers of pheasant tail. You can use pretty much anything you want. A speckled probably is nice, because most mayfly tails are speckled. So I'm going to just take this Coq de Leon and just pluck it off like that. And then I don't want these tails too long, less than a shank length, maybe about that long.
Dave is asking, can you just use pheasant tail tips for the tail?
Yeah, of course. Sure. Yep. And so I'm going to just roll the thread on top, and hopefully those tails will sit right on top of the hook shank. If I hold my finger on the far side, now that looks terrible, so I'm going to redo that. Get these. Just trying to roll those so that they roll. I got them on the near side, and I'm just kind of trying to roll them on top of the hook. Yeah, that's all right.
Gary's asking if you can use UV resin instead of glue.
Gary, you can use anything you want. The reason I don't like to use UV resin is from my old commercial tying days, that it's a stop. I have to stop and I have to apply the resin, and then I have to put the light on it, and it's just just a little extra step that I don't want to do. So yes, you can absolutely use UV, but it's just going to slow you down a little bit. Head cement, UV resin, Elmer's glue. No, don't use Elmer's glue. It's water soluble. Then I'm going to take a piece of copper wire, and yes, you can use gold. Yes, you can use silver. Yes, you could use black. You can use any color you want. This is adding a little flash in color, but its main purpose is to reinforce that pheasant tail, because pheasant tail is really delicate. It's great stuff, but it falls apart quickly. And then I'm going to take the end of that wire and I'm going to stick it inside that little hole in the bead. No reason. It's just a nice place to stick it. And, I want to cram as much stuff as I can inside that bead so that it doesn't move back. And then I'm just going to wind back. Just going to wind that wire on top of the hook all the way back to where the tails start. Notice I'm going down a little bit, down along under the bend. Then you can just leave that wire sticking out there. Everybody with me so far? Questions?
No questions since the last one. I think everyone's busy tying.
Okay. Roger Bird, are you tying? Roger, I don't know if Roger Bird's here today.
Yeah, he hasn't tuned in today.
Yeah. All right, let's see if I can find a decent pheasant tail here. And I am going to take my pheasant tail and I am going to pull, for this size fly, I'm going to pull, boy, a bunch of broken. Be careful about broken pieces of pheasant tail. I'm going to pull somewhere between, I don't know, 5 and...
Tuned in that he's watching the master at work.
Okay. Tell him Roger, I'm going to play your podcast question this week. I'm going to take, between 5 and 7 of these pheasant tail fibers, just pulling them off and separating them. Now, here's an important thing that's going to save you a lot of trouble. When you cut these pheasant tail fibers, you want to come right down into the stem and cut them as close as you can. The reason is that this stuff gets really short when you're tying with it, and you're going to run out of room, and you're going to have to grab it with your hackle pliers. Oh yeah, that's a good point. Sometimes your pheasant tail will shorten up on you. Sorry, I'm dropping things here. So it's a good idea to have a pair of hackle pliers handy in case you have to grab the pheasant tail, because your big clumsy fingers, don't have enough reach, but you can grab it with the pliers. I guess you can all hear my dogs. Okay. So one of the things that'll help you is to even just trim the very ends of this pheasant tail, because they're not always totally even, and you want to make sure that they're all tied in securely, and these ends are pretty delicate too. So just snip them off pretty close, but just even them out like that. Everybody see that okay? And then I like to wet them, helps hold them in place. And then I'm going to tie them in, and I'm not going to tie them in all the way along the shank for 2 reasons. One is that they don't add a lot of bulk, and 2 is that I don't want to run out of room. So I'm just going to, you don't need many turns to secure pheasant tail. It's not going to come out of there not going to slip out of there. Just with pheasant tail, it's so delicate. Oop, I just lost a couple fibers. I didn't even those out properly. So I'm going to do that again.
Keith is asking why you have the vise upside down. I believe that someone asked that last week too, but I think that's probably a curiosity a lot of people have.
I don't have the vise upside down. Let me look
So
on.
maybe it's looking different to him or something.
Yeah, it might be the perspective. No, I don't have my vise upside down. Not to me, anyway. Maybe it's upside down to. Doesn't look upside down to me.
Logan also chimed in that your dog woke up his lap and he's laughing about it.
Oh, funny. That's funny. I'm just getting a new bunch of pheasant tail because one of those slipped out. I didn't even those ends properly. So I'm going to grab another 5 to 7 fibers. Even the ends, wet them, tie them in. Doesn't matter where they go. I mean, you can see they don't add any bulk at all. Okay, so there's my pheasant tail, my wire, and then I'm going to come up to a point about a third of the shank. Well, it's almost halfway, but this a little bit more than halfway down the shank. If you notice, most mayflies are really about half abdomen and half thorax. So it's a good proportion to follow. Now, winding pheasant tail, there's all kinds of ways to wind it. What I like to do is take one turn with the pheasant tail, and then I'm going to twist them. I'm just going to rotate my fingers and just give them a gentle twist. This will keep the fibers from separating, because otherwise, and every turn that I take, I'm just going to twist them again. Otherwise, they'll start to separate. And you can see.
Tom, Sam is curious if you have any tips on saving the back while tying for long periods of time.
I do not. I do not get up frequently. Yeah, it's tough on your back. You might look at the height of your table and your vise. That might, as you guys can see, I let go of those pheasant tail fibers. We're going to have to start again here.
And Rosie Fox said, "Hey, Tom, try to keep up, will you?"
Yeah, really? Okay, let's start this again. You guys are all making me nervous with this international audience.
I know, we just had Steve tune in from Israel.
Oh my God. Wow. This is the most that we know of. This seems to be the most international.
I agree. It's a fun roll call to do at the beginning to see where everyone's from.
Yeah, we should make sure we do that. All right, so I got my pheasant tail tied in, and then I'm going to tie it off, and I'm going to, it's going to be tough because the camera's in the way. I'm going to take 2 or 3 nice tight turns to secure it.
Gaston's asking if you were twisting them to keep them together.
Yeah, didn't I say that? Yes, I'm twisting the pheasant tail fibers to keep them together. And it also, I think, makes them a little stronger because they're so, pheasant tail is such a delicate material. I'm going to adjust this camera a little bit here. It's such a delicate material that I think twisting them gives you a little bit more strength. Now, when you cut the ends of these pheasant tails, don't cut it too close. Leave some little nubs there. Because again, this stuff is so fragile. I want to do everything I can to help secure it. So I left those ends fairly long, and then I'm just going to bind them down. So now I've really got lots of turns around that pheasant tail. Okay? Everybody with me?
Yeah. Wade commented that we're all just sitting under Tom's learning tree.
All right, guys, don't flatter me so much, guys. All right, then I'm gonna reverse wind. I'm gonna cross wind the copper wire, and that means I'm gonna be coming toward myself. Normally, you'd wrap things this way, right? You'd go over the top and back around, but I'm gonna wind it towards me, and this is gonna make sure that I cross wind over that pheasant tail, and will make it a little bit more secure. And you must have 4 wraps of copper wire. If you don't have 4 wraps of copper wire, the fish will not take this fly. 3 is not the number. 4, 5 is too many. It must be 4 wraps. Everybody got that? I'm joking. Okay. Once you finish that copper wire winding, you want to take a bunch of turns around the shank. The reason is that the wire is coming this way and you're winding your thread this way. So there's a tendency, if you're not careful, for you just to unwrap that wire because you're cross-wrapping it. So by taking a few turns of copper wire around the shank, you don't need to worry about bulk here, and that's going to make sure that that wire is really secure and it's not going to come out. And then you can helicopter your wire if you want. I'm a cutter. And then just push that end down and wind over it a couple times. Like so. Smooth out your thorax a little bit. Okay. So there's that. I don't know why I worry so much about durability on these flies, because I'm going to lose this fly well before it falls apart. You fish weighted nymphs like this, you are going to lose a ton of them. You're going to lose a ton of nymphs. There's no way around it. Oh, Eric, real men helicopter their wire. Yeah, Eric, we'll see how often your wire comes unloose as compared to mine. All right? We'll have a contest. Real men helicopter. I know. Tim Flagler helicopters his wire. I know. Tim's the master. I'm just a hack. Okay, now I got my sparkly dubbing, and you don't need much of this. You're just gonna. It's a hot spot. It's not a hot thorax. So I'm gonna just pull a little bit of it off of there. Ooh, this is hard to get in here. And I'm gonna dub it. Might put a little more on there, just a little bit, but you don't need much.
John is asking, do you ever recommend putting a layer of head cement or glue under your pheasant tail wrap?
No, but that would not be a bad idea. I think it might get those little fibers that you love all gunked up, but I've thought of trying that. It's a good suggestion is to put a layer of head cement under the pheasant tail. It might be worth trying. I'm going to play around with it, but it's a good idea. Wax the thread. Yes, Gary, you can wax a thread if you want. That's as tight as it's ever going to be, and wax wouldn't help me. Certain dubbings are pretty easy to dub, and you don't always need wax. Okay, so now I'm going to take just a few turns here of this hotspot, and I've actually got more dubbing than I want on there. I don't want the hotspot to be much bigger than that. So somebody asked about this last week. To remove the dubbing, I'm just going to pluck some of that, and then I'll unwind it and retwist that. And now, so if you ever have not enough dubbing, it's easy enough to add some dubbing. If you have too much, it's just as easy. You just got to back off a couple steps and just pluck it off there. And go for it. Okay, so the rest of the fly is hare's ear. And you can use any fuzzy dubbing with guard hairs you want, or non-fuzzy if you want. This one calls for hare's ear. I make my own hare's ear. I have never found a synthetic or another natural fur that has all those little spiky little hairs that are all different colors. And easy way to make hare's ear is to cut all the fur off hare's ears, and especially cut all those little fibers up near the tops of the ears. Put it in an old coffee grinder, an old the spinning kind of coffee grinder is an inexpensive one. Buzz it a few times, and that will mix that dubbing up like you wouldn't believe. Now I'm going to put on about 3 times as much hare's ear fur as I did that sparkly dubbing, for a few reasons. One is that I want that part of the thorax to be a little bit bigger, and also I want to jam stuff up against that bead. So again, see how I'm dubbing this? I just pull a little bit off the clump like so, and then just apply that to my thread. And you're better off don't ever try to do it all in one lump, because it just doesn't work very well. So that's probably enough. I'm just adding a little more here at the bottom. And I like to start behind the bead, and then I wind back toward the hotspot, and then I wind back to the bead again. So see how it just gives you a little bit of a taper. And, I think you want the hare's ear to be about twice as big as that little hotspot. You can make a bigger hotspot if you want, but I don't think it matters. So then I'm just gonna whip finish, and we're gonna be done here. I can't put any head cement on because I can't get my jar open. I didn't put wax on it. So I'm gonna whip finish if I can get in here behind the camera, behind the phone. And you want to press that thread right up against the bead and put some tension on it so you don't get a big lump of thread there. And then you just want to use your deep penetrating head cement. You don't want to use really thick head cement, and you just want to bring your dubbing needle. Where's a dubbing needle? Here's one. A lot of this stuff is behind the blue partition, so I can't grab the stuff I normally could grab. You just want to put a little bit of deep penetrating head cement and just put it right here, and then right there, and then right there, and let it soak in. You want that to soak in so that it goes underneath the hare's ear and the dubbing and holds it in place. So that is it for the pheasant tail, hotspot, jig, whatever nymph. Do we have questions?
We don't have any questions, but Phil just wanted to remind everyone that this whole video and the recipe will be on the blog within the next day or so. You're going to find all the Facebook Lives that we're doing with the recipes, so you can, if you can't make it, and you can always do it on your own.
Oh, good. They're all they're all going to be on the blog as well as Facebook.
Yep.
Clip that rogue alfalfa fiber, Spanky. I did, Michael. Did you see? I plucked it. Any other questions?
Oliver's asking, do you brush out the fur?
Oh, do you tease the dubbing out? I don't on this particular fly. Once you cast this a few times, it's gonna fuzz up a little bit, but I don't brush the dubbing out on this particular fly. You could, if you wanted to.
Tim Glass said that he's a little late and just curious, does it present point up?
Yeah, most of the time. It tumbles too. Yeah, with the jig hooks, you've got your weight below the center line, so it should ride point up.
George is asking if you switch vices for different flies, or do you just like both of them?
Yeah, I just like both of them.
Yeah.
Did I get super glue in that eye?
All right. Well, you'll be tuning in on Wednesday, or you'll be dying on Wednesday. We also have an interview with Jim Kershaw tomorrow.
Oh, cool. I'm going to watch that. So, Wednesday we're tying Stimulator, right? I think.
Wednesday we are tying an elk hair cat.
Oh, elk hair caddis. Okay, we're going to get into the more complicated ones.
Yep.
All right. Okay, well, folks, thank you all for tuning in from all over the world, and I wish you good tying, and stay healthy, and we will see you on Wednesday at 3:00.